Okay, so part two of this chapter is really looking at dealing with variation and how businesses might do that. So some strategies companies might use to deal with variation is maintaining a certain amount of excess capacity to handle those increases in demand. So you might have extra lines that you can run. You might have extra people on staff to handle excess. You might have more inventory on hand. Another option is maintaining a degree of flexibility with changes, so being able to hire temporary workers or using overtime and being able to pull those options. And then the last one is waiting as long as possible for committing to a certain level of supply capacity. So sometimes you wait until you know a little bit better. So scheduling products or services with known demands first, so you know that you're going to do it and it's not going to be wasteful, and waiting to schedule other products until their demands become less uncertain. So you might wait to start, but if you're fairly certain that a couple of things are going to be needed, then you go ahead and start with those first. So I've seen this before. And you probably have too. If you've ever worked at a concession stand, as an example, at a basketball game, you make up all this popcorn before and the beginning part of the game, and then you wait until about halftime to see where you're at if you need to make more, or you can just ride out the inventory that you have. And that's really what, you make what you know you're going to need and then adjust as you go. And that's kind of that technique, really, in an easy to think about way. So aggregate planning, the first thing that you do with aggregate planning is you forecast demand for the intermediate range, and then you develop a general plan to meet the demand requirements. And then once you're done with that, you update the aggregate plan periodically, so monthly. So this is kind of the overview of it. First you forecast it, then you develop the plan to meet the requirements, and then you update the plan. Okay? Remember, this is a 2 to 18 month plan. Not today, not tomorrow. It's more out in the future. So aggregate planners are concerned with demand quantity. So if demand exceeds capacity, you need to achieve a balance by altering capacity or demand or both. So if you think about, I think one of my favorite examples of this is the Nintendo. When it first came out, the supply did not meet the demand, and it sold out immediately. Like it just went off the shelves like crazy. And I remember everybody going, why can't we get it? Why can't we get it? Everybody wanted hands on it. And sometimes that's a marketing ploy just to get the anxiousness and people wanting to buy it out there. But really, when people are selling it on secondary markets and making more money on it, that's not necessarily doing the manufacturer any good. So generally, that's not a great approach to increase your demand by making people crazy for your product and having them sell it at exceptionally high rates. That doesn't really help you in any way. It's great to generate the excitement, but not great if they can buy it for 6 times the amount you're selling it for. So if demand exceeds the capacity, you need to try to achieve that balance by either increasing your capacity or maybe you have too much capacity, you need to increase your demand, or you might play with, hey, I only have X amount of capacity, so in order to adjust my demand for it, maybe I'm going to raise my price so that I can make a little bit more because I don't have as much. And so if I lose a little bit in volume, it's okay because I don't have enough to cover the volume anyway. So you can actually manage that by making these adjustments. But it's really looking out in the future again, not today, not tomorrow. This is 2 months to 18 months. And then timing of your demand. Even if the demand and capacity are equal, planners often have to deal with the uneven demand within the planning period. So even if you have like the most steady demand possible, there's still going to be fluctuations in what you have capable. It might be in your supply chain, in the products coming in that you're going to transform, whatever it might be. There's still going to be some variation, and so you need to still be able to plan for the timing of the demand and making sure you have what you need when you need it. Okay? And there's some industries that will I think I was just watching Shark Tank the other day. I really enjoy watching that show, and they were talking about the garment industry and how you're ordering clothes right now for like 2 seasons ahead. And so that's kind of this aggregate planning. Like, what are people going to want 2 seasons from now? And how do you nail down that demand? And how do you generate excitement for it? That type of thing. So it's pretty crazy to think about how far out that is. So the things that go into your aggregate planning are your resources. So how much workforce do you have? How much does it cost? What's your production rates? If you use overtime, how much might it be? That type of thing. What facilities and equipment do you have? What is your demand forecast? So what does that look like? That's coming in. So what do your customers want? And then policies, workforce changes, overtime policies, that type of thing. Back orders, if you have anything on back order. And then your inventory carrying cost is important to figure out the total cost. Any back orders, hiring, firing, overtime, inventory changes, and subcontracting. So these are all things that are going to go into your aggregate plan. What's coming out of it is a total cost of your plan. And the benefit of this is you can play around with how you produce things to see to come up with a more effective cost strategy. And it's really not that hard to do, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a little bit. But it's a spreadsheet, it's Excel, and I'm sure that there's software programs to deal with this as well. But it's kind of neat to be able to try different things to see the impact of your outputs. Okay. So projected levels of inventory, projected levels of output, employment, subcontracting, back ordering, based on what you're going to need over the next year, year and a half. I think this is the next slide. So there's a couple of things that you can do. You can be proactive, so alter your demand to match your capacity. So if you have too much capacity, you can try to increase your demand by having sales, things like that, or changing your prices to maybe increase them if you don't have enough capacity. So that can be something that you play around with. And I'm not talking like hundreds of dollars. I'm just talking a little variation. And then you can be reactive. You can alter your capacity to match your demand. So in this case, my demand is going to be higher or lower. You can adjust your capacity to match that. And then in a mixed, you're going to do a little bit of both. So those are some of the strategies that are out there. Your options, like I talked about pricing, you can use shift demand from peak to off-peak periods. Pricing can be elastic, and that's important. You can offer promotions, which I talked about as well. Back orders are taken in one period and deliveries promised for a later period, so kind of ordering in advance and knowing that they're going to get it later. Sometimes I'll order something online and they'll say, we'll ship on February 20th. Okay, that means they don't have it in right now, and it's kind of a back order. And then creating new demand. The last slide I'm going to talk about in this section is hiring and laying off workers is a supply option. So you can create overtime or slack time. You can hire part-time workers. You can have inventories that you maybe keep on hand. And also using subcontracting. So subcontracting is using outside labor forces to increase your labor pool. So maybe somebody else is manufacturing or helping you assemble parts of your product. So those are your supply options. So in the next section, we're going to actually talk about some of these different strategies that are going to be coming. And we'll talk about how you can maintain a level workforce or a steady output rate or match the demand period by period, or a combination of those variables. Okay, so more to come.